Conduits in Minecraft kill hostile mobs, give you water breathing, better vision underwater, and much more. In this video, I'll explain everything you need to know about the Beacon of the Ocean. So how do you actually find a conduit, as there's a lot of things you need to make one. The first thing you need is a buried treasure so that you can locate a Heart of the Sea. Now thankfully, the Heart of the Sea is in every single buried treasure, but buried treasures aren't necessarily the easiest things to find, so there's several different ways you can effectively get them. One thing you can do is feed fish to dolphins, and they will actually swim towards the nearest treasure, not necessarily a buried treasure, but any underwater sort of treasure, like for instance an ocean ruin, or maybe a shipwreck. Another thing you can do is find a shipwreck, go inside of it and grab the buried treasure map that is in most shipwrecks. When you're looking at this, you can simply go to the directions it shows. This corresponds with the directions of north, south, east, and west. So in this scenario, you'd want to go basically south and a little bit to the east. You can even see there on the map it's starting to color in. And we can basically go over here till we're over the buried treasure X. You may want to know, how do you know if you're exactly on the buried treasure? Well, basically you want to line it up with the pixels exactly. That's pretty easy to do. You'll just see those pixels line up there. Then go backwards or forwards, so you just see the littlest bit of your cursor going out the back there. And basically, mining around here should find you the buried treasure. So you can see we're fully centered on that X right now. You can't see any part of our pointer, it just looks like we're right in the middle there. And because of that, we can dig down here, and there is our buried treasure. You can even have diamonds in there. There's also sometimes buried treasure maps in ocean ruins, and the third way you can find buried treasure is with chunk base. But to turn the Heart of a Sea into a conduit, you need 8 nautilus shells. And there's 3 different ways you can get nautilus shells. The first one is as a rare treasure loot when fishing, made easier to get with the Lure and Luck of the Sea enchantments. The other thing you can do is you can try and kill drowns, and there's a rare chance they will drop a nautilus shell. And the third and probably best way of getting nautilus shells is actually probably the only useful trade of the Wandering Trader. That is the trade of 5 emeralds for a nautilus shell. If you have a decent amount of emeralds, you can trade with the Wandering Trader up to 5 times to get 5 nautilus shells. And if you do this multiple times, or maybe kill drowns, fish, and do a combination of all 3 of these, then you can eventually get yourself 8 nautilus shells. Now to craft a conduit, put the Heart of the Sea in the middle of the crafting grid, surrounded in your 8 nautilus shells. That gives you the conduit item. But this item on its own is kind of useless, it doesn't really have any effect that it can help you with. So what do you do to make this conduit activate? Well, it's similar to the beacon in the sense that it needs certain blocks around it for it to function properly. And in the case of the conduit, that item is Prismarine. Now, of course, the best way of getting Prismarine is from the Ocean Monument. You can rarely find it in underwater ruins, although of course the Ocean Monument is the best way of getting it. Now, it can be any Prismarine type block as long as it's a full block, so for instance sea lanterns, Prismarine, Prismarine bricks, or dark Prismarine all work. And to make the best conduit, you need 42 Prismarine of any type, or even a mix of all the types. And throughout the entire process of finding items for your conduit, I would heavily suggest feeding dolphins and finding where they lead you, as they'll often take you to structures that'll give you items you need for the conduit, for instance ocean ruins for Prismarine, and leading you to shipwrecks with buried treasure maps, or even straight to the buried treasure. Now that you have 42 Prismarine blocks of any type, what is the best shape for a conduit? In fact, what are all the shapes you can build a conduit as, because there's different levels of effects depending on how big you build it. We're going to start with the basic conduit. You can build this starting on the seafloor here, or up in the water, whichever one you prefer, but it does have to have some water around it for it to work effectively, and I'll go more into that later. You're going to start by making sort of like a large plus shape like this. Then from there you'll want to go up 4 blocks on every single side, to then make sort of like this start of a cage look. Once you've done that, go around the edge with these blocks like this, and that will outline the conduit in a shape that'll give it the most power. And once we've done that, we will finish up by placing the blocks on the top here. And to actually activate the conduit, simply place your conduit in the very middle, break the Prismarine or whatever temporary block you have underneath there, and you'll know if it's fully powered because it'll have this red line in the middle of it. If we break one of the blocks here, you'll notice it just turns fully blue. That red line only appears when we have all 42 pieces of Prismarine there. That's a great way of knowing whether or not your conduit is fully powered. It's also nice because we have this amazing sort of enchantment table-like effect of all these particles going from the Prismarine and going into the conduit. There's even this interesting sort of heartbeat sound effect, which I like. It really makes it much more of an immersive item than most things in the game. But if you don't have that much Prismarine, you can also make other types of conduits. So you can make one with 16 blocks. You need a minimum of 16 blocks for it to be useful. So to do this one, that would basically just be one loop. So we'd go around here like this, build it all the way like that. You can see with the single loop here, with the one conduit in the middle, that does turn on, but it's only at the lowest stage of power here, so the effects only go out for a 32 block radius, which isn't too bad, but the effects aren't quite as good unless it's the full conduit. Now after this, we can go on to the next size, which is 7 more blocks added on. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 like that with one more piece on here. Now the range is extended out to 48 blocks. And if we want to make it even larger, we can put on a nether side. So we'll put on another 7 blocks here, 2 there, and 3 there. Now our range is going to be 64 blocks away from the conduit. And then if we add on some more blocks here and right over here, then that will extend the conduit's range out to 96 blocks. And of course, if we fully complete the little frame here, all the way around here, and make sure we have this on every side, this will then turn red, and we have our full conduit power, which has a range of 96 blocks away, which is actually a lot considering the fact that a fully powered beacon only has a 50 block range. Now what actually are the effects the conduit gives you? Well, it's hard to tell when I'm in creative, but I'll turn to survival here, and you can notice my water bubbles are not going down. That's because we have the water breathing effect with the conduit power there. The effect is applied sort of like a beacon or potion effect. And again, that'll continue to be resupplied there as long as you're within a 96 block radius. So that is a radius, not a diameter, meaning that there's actually a 192 block diameter around the conduit, which gives you a super large area to have this conduit power in, which I like considering the fact that makes it nearly 4 times as much of an effective radius as a beacon. Also, it makes your ability to see underwater be a lot better. It really does give you better vision underwater. And as well as that, it increases your speed of mining underwater by about a sixth, or 16.7%. You can even notice here a very slight faster speed in my mining of the sand, and so that can be nice too if you're working on some ocean excavation projects. Additionally, if a hostile mob is within 8 blocks of the conduit, it'll actually start to take damage. So it takes 4 health of damage every 2 seconds, or about 2 hearts of damage. You can even hear this interesting sound effect of the drowned being killed, and the particles sort of swarming towards it as well, which I think is an awesome effect. Also, it only does kill the hostile mobs within that 8 block radius if it is fully powered. You may be wondering, does it have to be this shape? It actually does. Now, of course, you can have less, but the Prismarine has to be in this area. So, for instance, if we place some blocks in this corner here, still very close, but we just store these blocks on the side, you'll notice this turns to not being a fully powered conduit, proving these blocks can only be on these dimensions for it to be used by the conduit. And of course, that would be like a 5x5 box shape, but only on this sort of wrapping present shape around it. You may be wondering, what are the uses of the conduit? It's a cool item, but really what can I use it for? And it can be used to build an underwater city, so you're fully safe underwater even in survival. You can also use it to raid an ocean monument more effectively, and of course, because getting this much Prismarine basically requires raiding an ocean monument, I actually have a guide on how to raid the ocean monument, and there's a link on the screen right now, and if you click on that, it will take you to that video, so you can get an effective source of Prismarine for your conduit. As well as that, this is very good for underwater excavations, even things like, let's say, mining out coral from a coral reef, because having this conduit here, not only will it protect you from the hostile mobs, it'll also make mining that coral be quicker, and you won't have to worry about drinking any water-breathing potions. And breaking and moving the conduit is actually pretty easy, so it's a nice way of having a transportable thing as well, as it doesn't take even half as long to build as it would, let's say, building a beacon. Hopefully you enjoyed that video all about the conduit, and I conduit wait to see you in the next video. Goodbye!